As at 2016, Abia State had a population of about 3.7 million people. Based on international standard of 1,000 megawatts to 1 million people, you'll be requiring about 4,000 megawatts based on the population alone. If you factor in the industrial demand, it far exceeds that figure, definitely. Now, Aba, which is the main commercial city in Abia State, is a frontline industrial city in Nigeria. Aba leads the field when it comes to innovative craftsmanship, but that city has been bedeviled by epileptic power supply over the past decades. It's a city that, if supplied with adequate power, can produce goods that if they don't tell you, you won't believe those goods are manufactured in Nigeria. There's a huge potential when it comes to industrialization, when it comes to manufacturing in that city. When they formed Geometric Power, they looked at the generation sector where they were going into, but they also looked at the distribution sector. They realized that most of the distribution companies that were already handed over certain areas by government, they were not metering customers properly. They were not providing the needed infrastructure for adequate power distribution. So even if you produced enough power, there's a chance you have a problem when it comes to distribution. So then they came up with an innovative solution. They decided to come up with an embedded system where they produce their own power and then they will form a subsidiary company to distribute their own power. So they decided to take it upon themselves to make sure that whatever they are able to produce, they will fully utilize that capacity in terms of distribution. It will get down to the end users who are their customers. And they proposed a ring-fenced area. Whoever was in charge of distribution within this area, we are coming to take over from you. We'll be in charge of distribution within this area. We believe that whatever power we generate, we want to distribute it just within this area. So give it to us, hand over the distribution to us, and us alone, that ring-fenced area that they asked for. It brought about a lot of back and forth in terms of litigation and all, but in 2022, it was finally resolved, and they got approval to carry on. Now, if you are an engineer or somebody who is technically inclined, you begin to see like, oh, but what's the big deal? If somebody is allowed to generate and allowed to distribute, if he cannot transmit, what's the big deal? You can still get shut out by transmission. That's true. But in this case, there's actually a lot of advantages that comes with what they've put on ground or what they've been able to achieve so far. Rather than not transmitting their own power being a disadvantage, they have actually turned it into an advantage. 472 megawatts of power is allocated to Abia State. I can surmise for you that this 472 megawatts of power will be split between the northern part and the southern part that Aba Power controls. So Geometric Power or Aba Power, which is the distribution arm, will get a share of that 472 megawatts in addition to whatever they can generate at Geometric Power from the national grid. If you look at that, then it's easy to see that where they are now is the base, is the minimum for them. The power from the national grid will serve as their base load supply power. And then whatever they generate, it will go from there. They currently are looking at a phase 2 for 1,000 megawatts. That's lovely. So if they deliver 188 megawatts in phase 1, if they decide to bring in investors, investors will be willing to come in because they've seen how phase 1 is going. So now, if they started with 65 megawatts, they get 65 megawatts on top of whatever they are already being allocated. So that is how they are going to improve power supply in this area. So if they pump 65 megawatts into the national grid, what it means is that automatically the national grid owes them 65 megawatts. So they are allocated 65 megawatts as a minimum. And then whatever else is supposed to be brought to them already, they still get it. That's addition, not this area doesn't get worse off in any way as a result of using the national grid for transmission. With just one generator or one turbine running, Aba Power generates 47 megawatts. Now this 47 megawatts, upon full capacity generation, they'll go about 188 megawatts. So let's say when they generate 188 megawatts and they are supposed to distribute to the ring-fenced area, what they will be then entitled from the national grid would be 188 plus whatever you divided from the 11% that is supposed to be allocated to Abia State, whatever is due them. When you have that kind of power available in the ring-fenced area, it will absolutely boost economic activities. In a city like Aba, it will very much boost economic activities. We are hoping that the pricing will be very reasonable, that people will be happy to pay. And I believe that if you compare the price of electricity from the grid, you definitely get it much more cheaper than if you were to run diesel generators, for example, to power your business. So if you take that into cognizance, I'm sure a lot of people will be happy to pay for reliable power from the grid. And that's where this business idea was so nice, so good, that they were able to pull this off. It's a learning point for most other states of the country. There are states that spent a lot of money down south to generate power, but because of this distribution issue, they were not able. So they ended up pumping all their power into the national grid and hardly got anything in return. Because even though the national grid was supposed to give you something in return, the distribution companies on ground had no capacity to distribute. So it's a very, very good system they have in Abia Power. You can also begin to wonder, or what if their systems get shut down? Or what if they have gas supply issues? All those things are true, but if they do have gas supply issues, they can always fall back on the grid power. So let's say the level of power supply they have now, whatever happens in the future, they have this. That's why I said this. They generate this base load, or they derive this base load supply power from the national grid. Even if they have costs to shut down one plant tomorrow, to do maintenance, this, that, whatever they need to do, they have the power from the national grid to continue to supply critical infrastructure within their ring-fenced area. Another issue that people might want to raise is, it sounds like a monopoly. It does sound like a monopoly. It is a monopoly. But most power distribution companies are monopolies. In fact, power distribution generally is designed in that manner. So you break sections up and hand them over to specific distribution companies. All of them are monopolies within their area. Because if you have two power distribution companies working in the same area, it amounts to a lot of redundancy and waste of capacity, because people will opt for one or the other. So who is going to lose the customers? But that's where government regulation comes in. If government regulates this industry in a robust manner, I don't think we'll have an issue with monopoly. Because as far as I'm concerned, monopoly exists in every part of the country currently. Every power distributor in Nigeria has power of monopoly within their own area of operation. Because we don't have any state or any area that has two power distribution companies working together in the same place. They always split them up. You hold your area, the other person has their own area. Oh, we have places in the world where we have more than one distribution company working within one domain. Not necessarily. What you have in most places are multiple metering companies, not necessarily distribution companies. So these companies meter and sell electricity. Your electricity connection comes from the same point. So technically, the connection, the company that manages the grid is one company, still a monopoly. But they have different metering companies. So you can have Aba Power. Aba Power can decide to engage 5 companies to do meter and sell to customers. Now, these meter and sell companies compete among one another. They can say, oh, one person will say, I'll sell 1 megawatt hour for 300. And the other one says, I'll sell 1 megawatt hour for 250. As long as your profit margin is reasonable for your business. Now, customers can say, no, I want to buy the cheaper one, and they swap. You are not swapping the grid, the distribution system. You are only swapping a metering company. So it does not mean that you have 2 distribution companies. It only means that you have one distribution company working with different metering companies, among which you can switch. So, as I said, most distribution companies operate as monopolies, especially here in Nigeria. And in many places around the world, they operate mainly as monopolies. So if you look at it, because they are not transmitting their own power, is actually an advantage. If you have a ring-fence system that has their own transmission infrastructure and transmit their own power independently, that's where we'll have a little problem. Because if anything happens, if they break down, they've got nowhere to draw power from, unless they are linked to the national grid or interconnected in any way. But if they are not, then they will be isolated. But in this case, that's not going to happen because they have the national grid to fall back on. And then as we continue to generate better amounts of power from other parts of the country, and then develop the national grid becomes more robust. So it's all for an advantage in this particular ring-fenced area. I think this is an initiative that should be emulated by other states, that should be emulated by other private operators. If Aba Power works for Aba the way I believe it's going to mark a new dawn in our distribution landscape. It's very, very commendable is what I'm going to say. So when everybody talks about Aba Power, it's not a hoax, it's real. The hype is real. A lot of people are talking about it today because the advantage is they tell you that it delivers. It delivers. All you need is to run those plants and those facilities efficiently. And because it's in the private sector, manned by seasoned veterans, seasoned engineers with the passion to develop, I have absolutely no doubt that Aba Power will be a huge success and a big example for other parts of Nigeria to follow. This is Discourse. My name is Azubike.